I've had my ups and my downs.
Phelps with 10 meters left. 3 minutes too good. The crowd roaring. Freeman wins gold.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show. The mission of this show is to help you perform at your physical best through the sharings of some of the planet's most inspiring and talented physical performers and physical performance minds. I trust you've been having a great week, and of course, a big welcome to 2018. I hope you saw in the new year in style. As per last week's episode, a big thank you for your support, your faithful support to the Physical Performance Show in 2017. What a bumper year it was. Geez, there were some great guests. Their sharings were so generous. The response from you guys listening in has been amazing. And certainly we're set for a bumper 2018. And to kick it off this year, we're going to take a bit of a look back at some of what we're calling the highlights reel from the Physical Performance Show in 2017. So we're going to be hearing from various guests, some of the key takeaways and stories that really lit up on social media from the guests that shared so well in 2017. So today you're going to be hearing from a bunch of athletes around some really fun, fascinating insights into physical performance. Today's episode, as always, is lovingly brought to you by POGO Physio. We exist to help you get back to your physical best following injury. We want everyone who walks through the doors of POGO Physio to cross their physio finish line. That's where we high-five you, tell you that you've done a great job, you finished rehabilitation, and you're back to your physical best. We do this through session-to-session care, as well as some industry-first models of care, including our unique 2, 6, and 12-week fixed-fee, unlimited access finish line programs, and our incredibly popular Wellness Boosters fixed-fee monthly access programs. To find out more about POGO Physio's services, including our 1-hour initial appointment, jump over to pogophysio.com.au. We'd love to help you get back to your physical best following injury. All right, so let's take a listen to some of the 2017 highlights. Boy, where do you start? We had some amazing guests, but perhaps one of the most exciting for me, certainly as a junior triathlete growing up, listening to this gentleman's voice commentate my own races in my own head, was Phil Liggett, cycling commentator of Fire Canado. Phil shared so generously around his career, the highs and lows and the learnings, and some really interesting stories. It was one of the most spoken about episodes of 2017. Let's jump over and take a listen to some of the snippets from Phil Liggett, cycling commentator extraordinaire. Phil, what would you say are the top 3 characteristics of a great cyclist as opposed to a good cyclist? What are the top 3 characteristics performance-wise?
Well, you've got to have, these days they look at numbers. Again, it's another one of my pet hates. And I think it's Contador's recently said they shouldn't have these wattage machines on their bikes because numbers, for me, make them robots. And at the end of the day, as Paul Serwin used to tell bike riders after he'd finished the tour and he was talking to them, he said, listen, what you've got to remember is you've got to just fucking suffer, mate. That's all it is. Don't give a shit, because Chris Boardman used to say, I wasn't getting the numbers today. And Paul saying, bugger the numbers, just bloody suffer. Because Chris Boardman was a brilliant bike rider. He won the prologue at least twice. But as soon as the first mountain came, he was first man to be dropped. But he wasn't that bad. He couldn't be that bad of 190 cyclists when he's such a talented boy, world hour record holder, world champion pursuer, etc. And so Paul says there are times, you got to throw that thing away and just be yourself and hurt yourself. So, I think the first attribute of a great champion is you've got to have the talent. Talent's something you can't feel. It just happens. But if you mentally believe in yourself, then that's what matters. If you believe truly that you can do it, then you're gonna go down fighting whatever happens. Yes, you've got to have the big lungs. I think that's the most important part. Strong heart, big lungs. There's no body shape for cyclists. I've seen tall, thin ones win stages. I've seen short, fat ones win stages. Merckx isn't a particularly outstanding character to look at. Yes, he's a big man. He's well built, but he's not. He doesn't look like an athlete these days, the great athlete that he was. And neither does Greg LeMond. Usually the guys, I always tend to think they've all got big hands. Don't ask me why. I always think cyclists have big hands that succeed. Do a lot of work with their hands, pulling on those handlebars.
Absolutely.
The muscle definition can be none at all. Like Gerard Saint, a guy that got killed outside of cycling on one occasion. He had legs like matchsticks, and yet he could fly up mountains. And he never realised how good he was because he got killed in a car crash, if memory serves me right. And there's no body shape. But I think the most important thing, the Belgians had that famous phrase, I've never heard it for years, but the phrase at the time I used to race was, the man who suffers 10 minutes longer than the next one wins the race. 10 minutes of pain is an awful long time.
Yeah.
If you can apply yourself. And people, when they watch television, they don't realize the pain these guys are actually going through. They think, oh, they can do it. Yeah, they can do it. But they're hurting just like the guy who just got dropped. Yeah, they've a little bit of talent, but they're hurting just the same. Same pain, same application. I mean, I can hurt myself when I ride a bike, and that's probably the only reason I did better, because I didn't have the super talent of an Eddie Merckx, so you had to hurt yourself.
So talent, enduring hurt. And what would be the third characteristic, Phil, of great cyclists?
Ambition and desire to win. It's pretty much the same, I suppose. But you've got to believe in yourself. Your bike riding will have given you some results, but if you don't believe in yourself when the chips are down, it's sometimes bad. I used to watch the junior cyclists come through, always winning bike races, one after another. But the minute they turned amateur, never mind pro, they couldn't win because they couldn't understand why there was others almost as good as they were, and they just couldn't win. I've got a whole list of riders I used to watch.
What's one word you'd use to describe Lance?
Well, I called him brash when he came on stage to receive an award. I was doing some awards in Vail in Colorado, and he just finished his treatment and he was bald. And I welcomed him on board as the brash cyclist. Who's at the time, of course, everybody was full of admiration totally, because he'd been a world champion. And he'd now got the problem with his testicular cancer. And then he suddenly, because he told me, he used to ask the doctor if he could go for a ride while he was in full treatment. The doctor said, if you can ride your bike, ride it. And he could ride 5 miles. He used to sit in the ditch, cry, get back on his bike and ride back 5 miles. And that's the sort of, so, you know, once he came out of treatment, he changed his whole body shape. He'd taken EPO as a matter of fact when he was under treatment, because that was a normal treatment to keep the blood thin and stuff and make more red cells. But then he took the decision when he finally got to the Tour with a whole different mental attitude to life as well now. And his words to his team were, if we're going to win the Tour de France, we've got to do what they do, and we've got to do it better to get the job done. That's a very typical American outlook on life, and that's what he did. We now know.
This whole conversation, we have a lot of time, will be about the details. Yes or no, did you ever take banned substances to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Yes or no, was one of those banned substances EPO?
Yes.
Did you ever blood dope or use blood transfusions to enhance your cycling performance?
Yes.
Did you ever use any other banned substances like testosterone, cortisone, or human growth hormone?
Yes.
Yes or no? In all 7 of your Tour de France victories, did you ever take banned substances or blood dope?
Yes.
I mean, I was actually at the World 2012 Triathlon Championships in Auckland racing in my age category. And uncannily enough, This was only a matter of days before, I guess, it made mainstream news at the beginning of the fall from Grace. And I was reading Tyler Hamilton's book, and I was just in shock, and I was sharing it with a few of my Australian teammates. I'm like, can you believe this, if this is true? And then it all sort of broke. What was going through your head, Phil, when you sat watching as the world did the famous Oprah interview, and Oprah asked that first opening question: did you use banned substances to enhance your performance? Yes or no? And Lance's categorical answer was yes. What was going through Phil Liggett, the voice of cycling's head?
Well, I'd arrived in for the start of the Tour Down Under, and I came from the airport. And when I arrived at the hotel, because it was all going to happen the next day, there was a block of cameras out there. I thought bloody Mick Jagger must have been in the car behind, because it was incredible. And the driver said, I can take you around the back if you like. I said, why are they for me? He said, I think they are. And they all, because of what was about to happen, they all wanted the story. And I couldn't even get out the car. They were cramming me. Anyway, I gave them the story, and then it was that afternoon. That afternoon, we got the Oprah show, and the manager of the hotel gave me a private room, because the press were all waiting to film me. Sat in the main room where everybody else was. So I watched it in the private room up in the hotel, and then I just remember the first questions as clear as it was yesterday, as you probably do. Yes, 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 and I thought, fuck, because I'm a great believer in you've got to prove. There's only one way you could have got Lance, as we know. It was a confession, because he'd found the secrets, and that's for sure. It wasn't a guy I particularly liked. He was brash. He was ruthless. You call him what I like. Nobody liked him, and this is the one reason that the drugs agency wanted to nail him to the cross, because whenever they said something about him, he sued them and he won. Newspapers alike. So he'd made himself a hateful person in the whole world, and nobody could catch him. So the only reason he confessed was because his son was being bullied at school, and in the end, Lance told him not to stick up for him because he was guilty. And his mum couldn't face anybody. The Livestrong people, they were devastated. They were the three big hurts in Lance's life, and he told all of them before he came to the Opera show too what he was going to say. I was shocked, but I mean, he was so far ahead of everybody else. Don't get me wrong, that guy was an immense talent. You can't make a donkey into a thoroughbred with a couple of files of EPO. I could take a gallon of the stuff and I would never keep up with Lance Armstrong. It was impossible. So, but if you're good, then you're 10% better than anybody else.
And Phil, I mean, over the years that have ensued, Lance has got his own podcast, commentates some stages between the tour. Have you had a conversation with Lance in recent years, Phil?
The last time I saw Lance was in Toronto, on 9th of September 2011. We have never seen or spoken or corresponded since. He's never bothered to come back to me. You can take it whichever way you like. Nowadays, I just don't know what I'd say to him. I don't hate him. I don't dislike him. He played the game he thought was the way to play it. He was never a person I could endear to, because he wasn't the sort of person you would endear to. Even his team, I'm not sure his team knew him very well. There was nobody in his life, really, except his immediate partner.
Yeah, and you mentioned his son. I believe his name's Luke there, Phil. And I recall the one moment I felt like, Oprah was interviewing a human being with empathy and with a soul was when she did ask about his boy, and that was the one moment I saw his eyes, glaze over with a tear, and I actually just felt great pity for him. I thought, I remember reading Tyler Hamilton's book and thinking, you know what, if I was in that situation as a young, ambitious 19-year-old, would the world have looked any different? And I just felt such a sadness for the sport at that stage and for Lance.
Definitely, the sport was suffering badly because, especially in the English-speaking world, because they're not interested in the sport. The English-speaking world doesn't understand the sport. All they want to do is talk about the bad side of it.
Yes.
They weren't interested in the fact that, yes, AFL players take drugs, and football players and golf players and Formula One drivers. We don't care. But cycling, it's too easy to call it drug peddling, isn't it? And so that's the way it is. And even now, I had a phone call only just after the Tour of Spain from a radio station in Britain to assess the achievement of Chris Froome this year. He's British, although they don't count him as British because he's never here. But I just had to explain to them right from day one, just if it had been somebody like David Beckham or the English football team, then you'd understand. But what he achieved was immense and has never been done before either, because the Tour's never been held in September time, and the Tour de France and Tour of Spain. So I don't know. I saw the great side of Lance. I did all of the gigs. He asked me to do them. I thought he was joking. I didn't think he even knew who I was. And he asked me in Amiens during the state of the Tour de France. He said, "You coming to Canada this year with me?" I said, "Why would I do that?" He said, "Because I need somebody I can trust on the mic. This guy's no good." So I don't know who that guy was. And I said, "Well, yeah." And so I went. I got paid. He didn't pay me. The organisers did. But I met all these cancer sufferers. I met his physicians and his surgeons, lovely people. And we steered Lance through all of the gigs and the bike rides. We did the rides together and we raised millions of dollars. And it was all just fantastic stuff. I had people come up who were on the last stages of type 4 cancer, wouldn't be around next week. And all they wanted to do was meet Lance Armstrong and shake his hand. He raised $600 million in his time with Livestrong. Livestrong has now become virtually extinct. It's still going, but we never hear about it.
Wow.
And he feels bad about that. But his attitude was very American. Let's get the job done. If that's what they want, we'll play it better than they can. And that was his attitude. But the reason he got hammered is because he ridiculed the world. All the drugs agencies, all the journalists, and he went for the throat and he sued them. And all they wanted was to get him. I mean, they just put the drugs agencies pussyfooted over the heads of all of his teammates, threatened them. They had to make confessions because of the high court situation, grand jury. They were in an invidious position. But they got let off. Couple of months suspension. And most had retired anyway. They only wanted Lance. And that's the way life is, I'm afraid. You, as they say, you make your bed and you lie in it.
As a fan of cycling triathlon, I listened to your voice through the 90s growing up, and I would go out and ride part of the Grafton to Inverell course and have your voice in my ears pretty much the whole time, pretending mock commentary that I was breaking away on a stage win. Phil, can I get you to do something a little bit out of the box for a bit of fun at the start of the show? Would you mind giving me a little bit of a mock commentary call as the young boy from Grafton, Brad Beer, winning a stage of the tour?
Well, why not, Brad? I mean, my history of Grafton is I was there when the Commonwealth Bank Cycling Classic used to pass through Grafton, and for me, everything was brand new in Australia at that time. And of course, it's famous for its jacaranda trees, and I'll always remember that. So let's just think now. Well, we're looking down the straight here at the moment at Inverell. It's been a long day out for the riders, but there is one man just in front. He's hanging on in there. His name is Brad Beer, and I'll tell you what, if he wins this, it'll be a big surprise. He didn't start as a favourite, but it looks like he might hold on here. He's up amongst the crowd line. He's hanging onto the barriers. The bunch can't see him. He's at 200 metres to go. He's not going to be caught now. Brad Beer has just set the best victory of his career. Well done.
Oh, Phil, you have just made a young boy's dream come true without the need for the exertion of a pro career. So thank you very much for humouring me, Phil Liggett.
And listeners, if you'd like to listen to more of that interview, perhaps you missed it, then that's episode 79. Simply jump back through the archives of the Physical Performance Show and listen to the rest of Phil's share-ins. Up next was another sporting icon. This is a gentleman that, just like Phil, I really looked up to going through my junior triathlon years. And also like Phil, this episode really lit up across social media and with the downloads. This was Steve Moneghetti. Steve Moneghetti, for Australian listeners, needs no introduction. For overseas listeners, he's an Australian marathon icon. Steve's been an Australian 4 times Olympic representative, and the Commonwealth Games marathon champion. Leading into 2018, Steve is going to be incredibly busy with his duties of chief de mission for the Australian team for the 2018 Commonwealth Games here on the Gold Coast. I caught up with Steve when he was on the Gold Coast for Commonwealth Games duties in 2017. Let's hear from Steve about his toughest competitor and a very funny reference he made to his PW streak. What's a PW? Listen into this snippet from Steve Moneghetti.
Mate, you probably answered it around Craig Mottram, but the toughest competitor you've ever raced against?
I think, having said that, I'm not sure if Craig was just unbelievably good. The toughest was definitely Deke, because I'm not sure if people realise, but if you go back and have a look at the footage, it's almost become a tradition now, or not an antique, but a classic, because he ran with strength and power. And no marathon runners now, the Africans are so light on their feet and so fluent, they don't actually run with pure aggression. Deke ran with pure aggression. I remember racing against him. I was just an up and coming kid, but he knew, he was trying to keep me in his behind him. And I remember him. He kind of just turned his head to look at me and just said, "Righto, mate, this is it." And he just threw brute strength. He just ran away from me, and there was nothing I could do about it. And he was bloody tough. And don't ever. Deke's a lovely fellow. We're great mates now, and he's got the perception of being a pretty nice guy. But as a competitor, he was tough. Really, he was one. I reckon he was the last of the real tough distance runners. And we've changed now. We've lost a lot of that real pure aggression and power. And he was so good at that. So he's probably the toughest competitor I've ever run against.
That's incredible. Listeners, jump back over, have a listen to Deke, talk about his career. Monos, is there a mantra that you've used consistently over your career when you run? So, is there anything that would often be a regularly played loop in terms of self-talk? One, I kind of reminded myself that, and I tell people, there's nothing I've ever done in a race that I didn't do in training. Wow. So, obviously not to the extent of I never ran 2:8:16 and 42.2k in training, but I did snippets of it. So I pushed myself. So I saw what I could do in training. So when I turned up at the start line, it was almost expected of me what my performance would be. So I was never really surprised by my outcome, because I knew I'd done the preparation to lead up to that. So I think preparation's the key. And I would be on the start line with people, and I could tell that they were standing on the start line. You can't see, listeners, with fingers crossed, going, "Gee, I hope today's my lucky day." Well, I knew I had them beaten, because I was on the start line going, today's not going to be a special day. Today's going to be the day I expect, because 2 weeks ago in training, that's what I did. So today, all I need to do is replicate that, and I win. So it's a good result. So I wasn't in that position hoping that things were all going to conspire to get me to have a good day. I'd already done it. All the preparation had set it up, that all I was doing was publicly executing what I'd done in training. And you've used that word a couple of times very much. That must have been, your mentality. It's just a matter of executing well. Yeah, and I think that's my mindset's probably, being a pretty meticulous, patient. I'm not sure if I don't know if I'm academically intelligent, but I'm intelligent in an unusual way of being able to read a situation pretty well and maximise the outcome from it, and that served me really well, to be able to know my physical preparation was good, and then what steps I needed to do within the race situation to make sure that preparation was reflected in my result. It's interesting you mentioned, in preparing for this evening, I read that Steve Moneghetti has a degree in civil engineering, a graduate diploma in education, and an honorary doctorate from the University of Ballarat. So I don't know about your statement about academics there, Steve, but, Well, another story, just no one would know this. I was training with Shane Nankervis in Ballarat, who's a great mate, and he went to World Championships and Commonwealth Games, and
he had a sort of a career change, and he wanted to do a real estate course. And I said, I love my real estate. Maybe we'll do it together. He said, that'd be great, because I've started it once and I didn't finish it, so it'd be good to have a mate doing it. So we did it together. So we started off, and he got one assignment in and chucked it in, and I finished it. So I actually did an agent's representative course as well, and I really enjoyed it. It was great to keep mentally stimulated. It was terrific. So got that under me. Although it's ran out now, so but I might go back.
Well, there you go. If you're in the Ballarat area and you want to list your property, come see Steve.
I'm your man. That's right.
You'll run fast. Steve, but I think intelligence on many levels is obviously a varied thing, but it's a hallmark of great physical performance, not just once, but across a career. I think that and the character of the athlete, you can't sustain that talent without, I don't think, the character and also that intelligence to manage yourself and manage expectations. So
that's true, Brad. It's a different form of intelligence. I think intelligence, we think different. We've probably bastardised the word a little bit, and your definition is a lot more on the spot, I reckon.
Particularly athletically. Is there anything still on the sporting bucket list?
Oh, not really. I think I really need to. It's a reverse answer, to be honest, Brad, because I've achieved so much personally that's now I'm trying to remove a bit of the expectation and go to events and be less worried about my result and try and enjoy the event and the camaraderie and helping other people. So it's going out of my personal success or personal enjoyment and trying to share that. So that's what I'm trying to do, which sounds quite bizarre, but I think that will extend. I want to run for as long as I can, and if I keep pushing at the levels I am now, I'm breaking down regularly now. So to extend my enjoyment of my running, I need to be a lot more relaxed with my performance.
How do you? I mean, that's a hard thing to navigate? That's
very hard, really hard, and my mind still wants to run fast, but my body isn't allowing me to. So at some stage, I've got to just balance that out. And I still want to and I will still push myself, but it's doing that within the boundaries. On certain occasions, when my training is dictating that I can push a bit harder, then I will. But I don't want to be under pressure, because most events I go to now, there's an expectation that I will still run fast and be pretty competitive. So I'm trying to reverse that, where I go to an event, if I'm in good shape, I'll run, but don't expect that.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's difficult. But where you've been, where I've come from, what do I tell people? I'm on a roll now. I have got the greatest role and succession going of anyone, Brad, because I am running a PW every run I go out. A personal worst. Seriously, I'm on a roll. I've run a personal worst longer and more continually than anyone in history of running. Well, that's a fact.
Well, mate, that's a credit to you. Maybe that's one of your career-defining, highlights, because you are still out there doing it and loving it. I think, mate, irrespective of your times, and that's the personal journey you're on, trying to navigate the expectations of yourself. But the running world looks to Steve Moneghetti, and I hear it all the time when you're in events and you're featuring here and there. It's like, Mones he's still running so fast.
Yeah, wow.
So, your personal benchmarks are,
it's all relative.
For the world looking on, all we know is Steve Moneghetti, the elite runner. Yeah. And whether you went out and ran 18 minutes for 5 or 25 minutes or 13:50 for 5, it's, still Steve Moneghetti. So
not to me.
Feels different for you, but isn't this a fascinating dichotomy? Steve, one bit of training advice for listeners, what would it be? If you boiled down everything and you could only give one bit of advice to help people perform at their best, what would it be?
Run 3/4 of your race distance regularly.
Run 3/4 of it. Can you expand on that, please?
So if you want to run a marathon, you need to be doing 35k runs regularly. If you want to run a half marathon, you need to be doing 16k runs regularly, just so your body. And I can give you a practical example of this. If I don't run for a while, I come back, the first run I run 5k, it feels like it's an eternity. And then if I've trained for a while, so you get back into the groove and you start doing some longer runs, 2 months later you're running 20k just like it was the 5k run. So your body does get attuned to distance. It's already the body is a great adapter, but you've got to expose it to allow it to adapt. And if you want to run a 21k race and you're running 10k's, it doesn't matter how fast you're running it, because your body hasn't adapted to that extra distance.
Yeah, and does it have to be at any certain intensity of effort, Steve?
No, I actually think run slow.
Run slow.
Yeah, because I actually like I don't know if it'll actually work, because I can't work it out, but you almost need to be on your legs as long as... So if you want to run a 2-hour half marathon, you should run your 16 or 17K run in 2 hours. So the time is about the time you're going to take, but obviously it's at a slower speed because you're not running that fast.
Time on your feet.
Time on legs.
Yeah, time on legs. Monas, if you could have dinner, fun question, with 3 people, living or past, who would be at that dinner table and why?
Oh, gee. Edwin Flack. Because he's our legend. He started the Olympic tradition that is Australia's involvement at every Olympic Games since, so he'd be great.
Yep.
Bob Geldof, probably, because he changed the world from he had a really difficult background, and through what he did at Band-Aid, love him or hate him for his attitude and that, he made a significant world difference, one guy making a difference. And probably I think Martina Navratilova, because I think she revolutionised female tennis, and so I really admired her when I was growing up. So that'd be a pretty good.
And yourself there, that's a pretty dynamic table, Monas.
Yep. Be some interesting conversation. Imagine Martina and Bob Geldof. There'd be some controversy out of there. You'd want to have the podcast of that one, I reckon.
Oh, it'd be great, mate. And lastly, if you could issue listeners with a physical challenge for the week from Steve Moneghetti. It can be entry level, or it can be very difficult, or it can be a bit of fun. What would you like to challenge listeners listening to get out and do in the 7 days off the back of this episode going live?
Right, okay, that's good. I think I certainly think that that Gammoudi session that I mentioned, where you're running a couple of laps fast, that's really difficult. And so what I would challenge people, especially if I'm assuming most people are running or exercising, I would challenge yourself to do a session that isn't at race pace. It's at a lot slower than race pace, close to race pace, and faster than race pace. Do that as a session in the next 7 days. Wow. Unbelievably hard, but some really good mental stimulation and physical benefit in doing that.
And listeners, if you do take on Monas' challenge there, be sure to let us know, tag us in on social media. Where can we find you on social, Steve? We can find you.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, I'm on all of those, and email as well. So I think I've still got the same mobile I've had for about 40 years. So people seem to ring me, they still find me. But one thing I love, I'm pretty approachable. So where people can find me.
Yep.
At a race nearby soon.
Yeah,
that'll
definitely
be where I'll be.
Steve will be popping up here.
Yeah.
Monas, we will, and listeners, we'll tag up all Steve's handles in the show notes. So jump over and have a listen to look there for anything you need to connect with Steve on. But that just prompted me. There was that Merc that you said you won when you won, I think, the Berlin Marathon. That just flicked something in my head. Did you drove that for quite a period of time? What's the story with that?
Yes, I kept it. One story I do tell about that, I don't know how long we've got here. I'm killing your time, but I remember. So we didn't actually get I won a 300E or something, and by the time we worked out to bring it back to Australia, pay in duty and change it, we had to put some anti-pollution gear or something on it. So we just took the money, so it was about 63 grand, and we actually went to Mercedes in Australia and said, well, here's our money, what do we get? And it was a 190E, and I was really happy with that. So it got downsized a bit, but it was still pretty good.
And listeners, if you'd like to get the full episode of Steve Moneghetti, perhaps you missed it, that's episode 54. Jump over and check out the Physical Performance Show archives. Up next, we're on a running roll. And I caught up in episode 58 with Dean Karnazes, the ultra-marathon man. And boy, did this show get some commentary around it on social media. Lots of downloads, lots of love for this guy. Dean Karnazes. This gentleman is prolific in his accomplishments. He's not only a best-selling author of numerous books that have been translated into 16 languages, but he is a runner of extreme magnitudes. Dean has run 350 miles. That's right, 350 miles continuous. He's won the Badwater Ultra Marathon through the searing heat in Sierra Nevada. Dean has completed the now famous, one of his books actually, 50 marathons in 50 days in 50 states of the US in 2006. And more recently, Dean has completed the Spartathlon, which is an incredible run tracking the journey of the historic figure of Phidippides, the father of the modern-day marathon. So you're going to really enjoy Dean's sharings. If you missed the full episode, jump back and take a listen. Dean's episode was 58, but in this little snippet, Dean talks about his motivation to do what he does and also the adventure of running a marathon in each country of the world, which is Dean's upcoming next project. Here is Dean Karnazes. There's something that I've heard you say, which really I think is a beautiful insight for runners and people out there looking to perform at their best, and that's, you've been quoted as saying, motivation gets you out of bed, but discipline keeps you out the door. Can you unpack that a little?
Yeah, people say to me, like, how do you get motivated? And you just must always feel like running. And come on, there are days when I have no desire to run at all. Especially if I'm in a training block and it's going to be a hard day. But it takes discipline. I mean, it really does. Not everyone is self-motivated. People say, well, listen to your body. Well, if I was to listen to my body would say, sit on the couch and have a beer and order some pizza. Come on, that's the easy thing to do. What we're doing is not easy, and that requires just mental toughness and discipline.
A bit like writing the books.
Same thing.
Just showing up. And I mean, there's a beautiful phrase that I often refer to, or saying it's, let the pain of discipline work on you now so it can work for you later. It's it really is a force multiplier. But where does that come from within you, Dean? I mean, that innate discipline, is that something that's genetic for you, or is that, where do you think that actually comes from? Because clearly it's a big driver of your achievements, both as an author, as an incredible athlete, and as a role model for so many people. Where does it come from for Dean Karnazes?
I think it goes back to the idea of arete, of bestness, like just trying to be the best that I can. When I look back and I'm ready to be buried in the ground, what will disappoint me is if I feel like I did not live up to my own expectations. So that is really what I strive to do, is just be the best that I am capable of being. And as a writer, it's getting better, but I think I keep improving. As a runner, I think I keep improving. So it's just the pursuit of personal excellence.
Dean, in reading Road to Sparta, I sort of picked up a thread that through your formative years up until this Spartathlon and a race and your unearthing of Phidippides' journey, reliving it, that ashamed's not the right word, certainly not, it's the furthest thing from it, but that you didn't necessarily run towards your Greek heritage, and you cite that this concept of arete, the Greek concept of arete, is a real driver for you in getting out of bed and having discipline push you out the door. Do you feel that you can now only truly be your best now you've almost reconnected and embraced who you authentically are in terms of both your heritage and obviously you're aware of your gifts?
Yeah, I mean, I as I said in writing this book, I mean, I sought to learn about Phidippides, and in the process, I learned about myself, and I learned about my ancestry, and and the values, and the Hellenic pride and the culture that existed 2,500 years ago, and see that it is more relevant than ever in this very day. And the idea of personal bestness, of living up to the best that you can be, is, I think, the goal that every person should have.
Yeah. Dean, you're about to undertake the most audacious undertaking of your career, potentially, and that's, running 200 plus marathons in a year. Can you give listeners a bit of a perspective on what you're looking at doing from November this year?
Yeah, so, going back to running 50 marathons in all of the 50 United States in 50 days, I want to do that same sort of thing globally. So I'd like to I'm planning on running a marathon in every country of the world in a 1-year time span. So there's 203 countries, and I want to visit each and every one of them and run a marathon while I'm there.
Yeah, well, and you're doing this, you're not doing this on your own. You've got some backing from the US government, I believe, and also the UN, right?
Yeah, well, I was, last summer I served as a US athlete ambassador. So I was sent to Central Asia as a sports envoy. And I've been working with the U.S. State Department and the UN and trying to get the passports and the permits to get into all of these countries. And you're right, it's been a 6-year process. And honestly, I think it'll be a 7-year process, because I met with the State Department folks in Washington, D.C. Last Friday. And, with the new administration, things are changing. And the world's become, unfortunately, a little more conflicted since I conceived this thing. Countries like Syria, North Korea, Russia. It's not going to be easy to get into these countries now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's certainly a state of unrest, isn't it? So do you feel like November is still a realistic kickoff, or it's going to be potentially pushed back?
I can guarantee it's going to be pushed back.
Yeah.
And people ask me a lot, do you ever fail? Well, with this one, I've been failing for 6 years. And I'll continue failing until I succeed. So it might take me 7 years. It might take me 8 years. And 8 years of failure will get me to success.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful, mate. Well, certainly listeners and, anyone that knows of this upcoming adventure, I think everyone's excited at the prospect. And in many ways, it's symbolic in this day and age. I want you to unpack, Dean, just in bringing this to a close, something that, you've been quoted as saying, and that I think's pertinent to our conversation there around some of the unrest in the world. Running can rise above it. What do you mean by that, Dean?
Well, I think any runner has sensed the power that running has to unite people. There's so many things in this world that divide us, be it the color of our skin, the God we worship, the language we speak. But running is a commonality all humans share. And I've become this global ambassador for running, and I can go to places like Portugal or Kazakhstan, and people show up to run with me, and we're as though we're one. It has a magical way of bringing out the best in people in this common thing that we all do as a species. And I think there's power in that, and I think the world could use something like that. It's a simple, naive act. It's placing one foot in front of the other, at an accelerated pace, but it has profound power to unite people. So that's kind of what I'm hoping to achieve during this global run.
Well, as far as big names in the world of running, I was so privileged to catch up with a name that's possibly no bigger than episode 77's guest, and that was Bernard Lagat. People know him affectionately as Kip. Bernard has done so much in the world of running. It really is one of the most impressive bios in running. So speaking with him for this episode was really a pinch myself moment. Bernard shared so much in this episode. We're going to share a few snippets. Bernard's bio, where do we start? 5 times Olympian between the Sydney Olympic 2000 Games and the 2016 Rio Olympic Games. Bernard's a dual Olympic medalist, 2004, picking up the silver medal in the 1500 metres and the bronze medal in 2000 at Sydney. Bernard's a multiple American and also Kenyan record holder. He's actually the Kenyan record holder for the 1500 metres. He is the second fastest man ever over 1500 metres behind the legendary Hisham El Garouj. And one of the things that really made me want to seek Bernard out for the Physical Performance show was sharing around his longevity. Bernard, at 41 years of age, qualified for the 2016 Rio Olympic Games, running the 5,000 metres and winning it after he came from 6th with 200 metres to go to first, running down the field in what was a 52-second 400 metres. So Bernard is someone that if you missed, please jump back, listen to the full episode. But for now, let's have a listen to Bernard share just a few key insights from his time with me. We talk about Bernard's mindset. You'll hear that in this snippet. The 3 top tips for longevity in pursuing your physical best. What fuels Bernard to keep running at 41? And he also talks about his role in the 2017 Break Into Nike project as a pace setter for the legendary Eliud Kipchoge. Here he is, Mr. Bernard Kip Lagat, legend of the running world. What would you say are the sort of top 3 things, if you could pick 3 things only, that have helped you sustain your career at this level of intensity for so long? What are your top 3 tips?
It's just like this. One of the things that makes any athlete a successful athlete is a good relationship with the coach. So for me, I've had my coach who brought me from Kenya to United States in 96, and he's coached me ever since. So you need to have somebody who has your best interest at heart, and at the same time, somebody that knows what training you need, specific training that tailored to you, that is tailors that training to you, to make sure that you are training to always be going up, to be improving every single time. It doesn't matter how long you've been with him, but you need to be improving every single time. Improvement might not necessarily be in terms of the outcome of a race, but how you handle the training. If the training that I was doing in previous year is harder this year, then that means we are not making improvement. He wants to make sure that this guy, I gave him this training last year, but this year he's actually like killing it even more. And then so it is a constant improvement. So I have a coach that has really known me more than I know myself. I always say that, and I think it's true. And sometimes I start to question the training sometimes, and I'm like, no, he knows better. And I trust that. So that trust, you have somebody that knows you very well. And then at the same time, when he gives you the training, you believe also this training is going to help you. And so that is one thing that has helped me. Another thing that we are talking about injuries earlier on. Injury is the worst thing that an athlete, and I feel so bad for athletes. There's so many athletes that are so great. We even had, Buster, I call him Buster, Mottram.
Yep.
He is a great athlete, trained so well, performed at the highest level. But then there was a time that he had an injury. I mean, I think it stayed for a long time. And then we had so many friends of mine that have, had to retire because of injury, like knowing retired early because of an injury. So many, I can mention so many of them, but I've been so lucky not to have that. And how I do that is really lucky. I have my wife who is an athletic trainer.
Yep.
And then my coach also is, I was telling you, the training that he gives me is the training that is tailored to me. So more training sometimes can lead to a problem. It might not be a permanent injury, but something that nags all the time. So we try to avoid that by actually training good enough that, you've heard of me I'm always so good at temperance. I believe we can just maintain the temperance as hard as possible. And then sometimes I don't really need to do 15 miles every now and then. But there's athletes who are like getting on to 100 miles or even over. But my mileage at the peak is 75. That makes my body be able to be strong and sustain whatever training that is intense, but not volume. And so coach knows very well. And then not having injuries is number 2. And at the same time, that mental thing also that I was saying, that you actually alluded to, like, hey, you said before, if you act like an old man, you train like an old man, you feel sympathy for yourself, like, oh yeah, I'm so slow today. These guys beat me in training because I guess I'm so old now. That never crosses my mind. Yeah. If I'm with Steven Sambu, who is in 20s, if I'm with another veteran like Abdi Abdurrahman of my age, I'm just in there thinking, it is training. And these young guys here, I'm going to show you guys how to train. I'm going to train with you, and you are going to feel the pain. And every single time, they feel the pain, and I feel the pain as well. And so I don't believe. Yes, and so when I go into the racing, I always go knowing that there is no race that is too strong for me. I've done it. As a matter of fact, you guys are still new to this. If you have trained really well, I've trained so well, let's meet and I'm going to win. So you go in there with almost like, you don't say it loud, but, you kind of almost have to like pump yourself and actually be a little cocky a little sometimes, when to yourself, and you don't show it, but in your heart, okay, I've trained well, you guys are going to feel it. And you just go with that, and you execute the races the way you plan it to work. My coach is a strategist, so I have a coach also that strategizes my races. So I go in there with a strategy. We have about 5 scenarios. Go right now. If something happens like this, you do that. If something happens, do this. Even just the other day in Great North Run, he gave me a strategy that I tried to stick to it, and then I end up falling back to another strategy that he told me. And, it helped me. I finished 63, but it's always strategy that works as well.
What is it that still fuels you? What is it that fuels Bernard Lagat, obviously, to be part of something like Break In 2 with yes, your good friend Elliot's recent run?
Absolutely. That, Brad, is something that makes me want to do this again and again, is the fact that it's new challenges. So the reason why I said, hey, I think I'm going to honorably stop running track and field. I want to leave my legacy. I ran in 2016, And I said that was it. And I do not want to stay for too long. I have achieved, I've inspired so many young people. And even not just only young people, like you're telling me, like even the seniors not seniors, but the veterans that are with me in the same age, the masters, they tell me, you inspire us. And I feel like I've done that. So now what else can I do while I still run fast? I feel like just stopping right now is just almost like a waste of another 5 years that I could have just done something. So then I told my agent, James, I'm not going to stop completely. So I will call it my career in the track, but then I'm going to go to road racing. I didn't see what I can do. There's always another challenge there that I always wonder, that I always think about. How would it feel like to go into half marathon that I'm racing with the best? And then we looked for a race. We went to Manchester, and then running against the best athletes, Mo Farah, Jake and Zane Robertson. I mean, Dayton Ritzenheim, all these guys are amazing runners. And then to be put in there, you just feel like, wow, this is it? Okay, how painful is this going to be? Well, let's go see. Let's do this. So this is the fun challenges. And then being at the Breaking 2 in Monza, helping Kipchoge. Lopez Lamont and myself were the only track athletes there. So think about this. You are looking at everybody that is new. This is they've asked me to come and run in the marathon, to basically to see this guy break history. He's my boy anyways from the village, but I wanted to help, it doesn't matter who would have won that day. We have the Ethiopian, Eritrean, and the Kenyan, who is my village boy. And so I said, I'm going to do that because these are the things that I love. I'm training for challenges and so much fun things like that in my life right now.
And so the challenge is what drives you, and I think that's just maximising your potential. And I love what you said, right, Bernard, around it would be a waste to not use these next years to see what you can do and reiterate and go again. What did you say on Breaking 2? There's that beautiful photo of you with your hand around Eliud Kipchoge's head there, and you're saying something. And obviously the cameras couldn't pick it up because that's between you two. But if you're happy to share, what did you say? What was the first thing you said to, as you said, your village boy when he finished?
I told him, congratulations, you're incredible. And let me tell you, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I think that's what I told him, because that was an incredible run.
I mean, what was it like to be part of that behind the scenes? I mean, the running world was just so excited.
Let me tell you, everybody's like, wow, what a beautiful formation that you guys were making. You guys are like machines. It's like synchronized. Just come out. I mean, some of them, you drop out. Some of them go in there peacefully. But we had 6 days. We had 6 days of hard. I mean, when we started, everybody was rusty. Even us. Like, I thought I was one of the captains. And that is why Nike said, Bernard, we want you to come because you know what? You've been there for a long time. And you can be our good captain. So we are not asking everybody to come. But I think the reason why we want you, we have so many young guys, but I think you can help in communication, even on the day of the race. So, and I said, yes. I'm happy to come and do that. But I was a little hesitant because I'm like, if these guys are running at 434 per mile or 433, 434 is what they wanted. And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I hardly do that in training. And I have to do what, like 5K, just going that hard, like 3 miles of 432? I'm like, I almost feel like, I almost thought, man, am I going to be doing, what if I do a bad job? What if I drop out and I'm supposed to be pacing Eliud? But you can't do it. My coach told me, he laughed at me like, oh, no, come on, man. Even though you do some of the tempo runs at 444, doesn't mean like you cannot do 430 flat, like for 3 miles. Like you can do that. You can do that any day. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's do this. And really, the training was there. The panic was because this thing is so magnetic. It was so huge. Yeah. It was intense. And so we did those formations, and the Ethiopians made it lively. They was teaching us all these chants and, kind of like almost like the Moran dances, the warriors. It was amazing, man. And to see Eliud, of course, running 2:00.25, that was incredible. That is why I told him, you're incredible. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. And this was the guy that you could tell he really wanted it, and he went for it. Even the other guys too, Lisa and Cezanne, they went for it, man. It was amazing and something that I will always remember.
Yeah, what a moment in the world of sport. And I think the world, would love to have seen it happen, but they also, I think most people didn't believe it could get so close.
Yes.
And so to be part of that, Bernard, and to feel that the pressure and the almost nerves from what you just described, I think is just such a beautiful insight into how much it meant to so many people.
Yes, but it's so amazing. One thing also about Kipchoge is, while us, the pacemakers, were kind of nervous, it's amazing. You think this guy's about to run maybe 59. We are so nervous as heck. And he's still calm. And I'm like, what? How did you do that? How do you do that? But then, and I was telling this to Lopez Lamang, and Lopez was like, Kip, you're nervous because something that you have never done. And it's not your thing. But let me tell you, a lot of us think of you the same way in the 5K and the 1500. Like suddenly 1500, we are the ones that are like, this guy has no nerves. So they look at me that way, and I'm like, oh, I guess this guy is in his zone. He knows I've done it before, and I've done the training. So it's like, I'm nervous, but like, no, you are like this in 1500. And so we always look at you like, this guy has no nerves. And when you ask me, I actually feel comfortable every time before the start of the 1500 or even 5K.
And so that's that beautiful knowing that this is your sweet spot, as you say, you're in your zone. And I mean, rolling out from the 1500 before we throw into a performance round, Bernard, I mean, to this day, you've still got the second or third, I believe it is, fastest 1500 metres of all time, 3:26.34, just 0.34 behind your dear friend and, legend of the sport, El Garouge. So, you are still there in the history books, Bernard. Just absolutely amazing. Can we do a performance round, Bernard? This is a series of quick-fire questions about your training. Are you ready?
Okay, yes, I am.
Bernard Lagat, what's the training session you most dislike?
I dislike mile repeats. I can't stand that.
And what sort of recovery are we talking about?
Oh, we are talking about 3-minute recovery. And sometimes coach actually, especially when we were doing this half marathon, he wants us to do not us, but he wants me to do mile repeats and at this, running under 4:30, and we could actually go up to 2 minutes, only 2 minutes in recovery. Gosh. I hate that.
Training session you most love, Bernard?
Oh, I love 300s and 400s, especially 300s. You just run 300s, jog 100, 300, jog 100. And that jog could be about 25 seconds. And you go again. And the pace we're going at is about 40, 42, 43. So it's moving. It's fast, but I love them. I can even do 10, quickly.
So 10, got it. Pre-race meal, having run at 5 Olympic Games, however many World Championships, medalled at 13 international medals. What would you normally use to fuel yourself before a race, Bernard?
Oh, lots of bread, and I like chicken with pasta, and nothing creamy. I always like clear sauce or just tiny bit, but normally kind of like marinara and chicken. So plain really, but most bread and a lot of water.
Yeah. And Bernard, around peak training, I mean, were you quite regimented around your bedtime, your morning time? Were you quite structured with that, with sleep?
No, I'm not. I'm really bad. Especially, I'm just a late night person. Sometimes I find myself reading the news until 1 a.m. and then I still have to wake up 6 in the morning. So that's something I still need to work on.
And listeners, keeping the running theme going, I caught up earlier in the year, 2017, that is, with Cassie Fien on episode 42. It was a very popular episode. Cassie shared extremely transparently around her running and what it means to her, the challenges, the highs, the lows, and of course the learnings. By way of bio, Cassie's been a dual City to Surf champion here in Australia, the Gold Coast Airport Marathon half marathon champion, and Australian half marathon representative. Cassie really struck a chord with her mantra. It became very popular, certainly lit up social media. And also Cassie touched on her success to date in the absence of a very structured running program. She's a remarkable athlete and she had some fascinating things to say. So here's Cassie Fien with a few snippets from episode 42.
What's the mantra though that you've got going through your head when you're racing?
I guess I've taken that. So when I was younger, you're going, oh, that girl's going to beat me, that girl's going to beat me. I don't have that as much anymore. I just have like how much pain I'm going to be in, and that pain is temporary, I guess, and just to give it my best. Like that's just the mantra that I have. Another one is hope. Hold on, pain ends. So that's another little mantra I like to, and you can kind of get that through the rhythm. Is hold on, pain ends. Hold on, pain ends. And try to just stick with that pain mentally for as long as I possibly can. And yeah, that's, I guess, my mantra now.
Does the thought of the almost fear of the pain ever put you knowing what you got to go through to get to the other side?
It really does. That does scare me more than other competitors. Is the potential pain I'm going to go through, but I'm not too worried about the pain because I love pain. I'm actually a glutton for it. What I am most scared of is, and has happened through races, is what my body does, and just crumping out on me. Berlin was a prime example. I don't know what happened there. That was out of my control. I wasn't so much in pain. It just, my body wouldn't go. My legs wouldn't go. And when you get to that point, there's nothing you can do. So yeah, I guess going back, it's not so much the pain. I'm worried about, well, how's my body going to respond? Like, is something going to happen out of my control? And that scares me because, again, it's out of your control. There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, interesting. We'll touch on Berlin as we go. Best recovery tip, Cass?
Definitely nutrition. I've really discovered nutrition, particularly working as a physical training instructor and being around the guys at the gym. You wouldn't have thought it, but weightlifting and bodybuilding and stuff like that, it's the same recovery principles. It's getting that glutamine and the protein, that pure protein in that certain time frame to be able to recover. So that's a big one for me. Yoga is brilliant. I don't do enough of it. That's for my New Year's resolution, to get in there and do that. Massage is incredible, and foam rolling as well. Yeah.
So there's some of your staples that keep you out there. Cass, we're out of the performance round. Well done, you made the session. You completed the session.
Awesome.
There's a couple of things I just want to drill in on there. You mentioned earlier you've never had a run-in program.
Yeah.
So how does that play out for you? You said you run to feel.
Yep.
So do you have a bit of an idea in your head of what you want to do that week?
Yep.
In the bigger picture leading into an event? But then you get up and you'll quickly modify if you feel you need to.
Absolutely. So I have how many K? I only work on Ks. So how many Ks I generally want to cover during that week, and then I just go out to make that happen. So I try to work out, okay, if I need to do this many Ks, well, I've got my long run Sunday, so that's pretty much a staple. And then I just break it out for those rest of those 6 days or 5 days or whatever to be able to have the bigger sessions in the morning and then just have a really easy 5-minute K pace in the afternoon, and put the incline down on the treadmill a little bit on the afternoon just to tick the legs over. So that's all I've ever worked off is a general guide of how many Ks I want to do, and then just fitting in the Ks around there. So, and it's a big thing is because of my job, I have to be flexible, and I guess it comes with its shortfalls in the sense of it's hard to taper, and to actually hit a race like bang on at the precise time that you want. But in saying that, it's made me really go, like when people have coaches and say they're coaching from a distance or something like that, they want you to do a certain set, and so you have to do what they do, and you have to have that recovery. Whereas with me, I'm really in tune with how I feel. So I know that if I'm having a really good day, well, let's build on this. Let's go for it. Let's do a bit more. But then if I start and like I just don't have it today, well, then I'll cut it away and then I'll find it somewhere else later in the week. So what I think is the advantages of that is that I'm very in tune with how I feel. So I have a very comprehensive running diary. I've got it on I put it on online, not online, sorry, on an Excel spreadsheet, and I've got it over the past few years. And so in those little boxes, I've got how I feel, how confident, my confidence levels of the session, how my body felt, and I put numbers in. So then I can go back and go, like say leading into an injury, or if I had a bad performance, well, what was I feeling a few weeks before that, and then I can go and build on that in the future. So yeah, it's a different way of doing it. Comes with the shortfalls, but I think comes with its advantages as well. Yeah.
It's fascinating. There's no right or wrong, is there? And obviously you're using data in the sense of your spreadsheet to still get some visibility. I've confessed on this podcast earlier on that I have not had a running program for years outside of a bit of a triathlon program I had 2012. And the irony is I spend more time working on others' programs, helping them rehabilitate from injury, getting back to being able to then be coached by their coach than I ever do on my own. So I have been historically week to week, here's my work week, I'm just going to do what I can around that. So I just think it's a fascinating, no right or wrong. Once again, it's what works for the athlete. I'd like to get some coaching ahead of trying to do a PB for the marathon. So I'll report back to you and let you know how that goes.
Yeah, let me know.
Cass, you also mentioned there that when you're on the treadmill at times, you get in your zone. In your words, so, I mean, many listeners they know that I think that's the drug, right? That is our drug of choice.
So much.
As people that enjoy physical performance. How would you describe the zone? Like if someone asked you to describe it, how would you describe it?
It's like cruise control on your car. That's exactly how I describe it. It's like when you're on the highway, you click on cruise control and you're good to go. Whether you listen to tunes and you're just in your zone. You're just like watching the world go by, and it just feels effortless. You don't have to do anything. So that's definitely what the zone feels like.
And how does it? So in a marathon, when was the last time you felt the zone in a marathon?
Oh my gosh, my last marathon I did was amazing. I was in the zone the whole way. I was joking with myself in my head while running a marathon. Now, so I've done 4 marathons. The first 3 I did, I thought death would be a better option. Like literally thought death would be a better option. But this last marathon I did was amazing. I was literally joking with myself pretty much the whole way until the last maybe 3K. That was definitely zone work, and I can't wait to do another one because it felt so good.
Because this, Cassie, was take listeners through this last marathon. It was in Japan, I believe.
In Saitama. Yeah, so.
And what time did you run for this one?
2:33:13.
Which, Cass, I believe, is a PB?
PB, yep.
So, where were you overall?
2:33:17.
2:33:17. Every second counts.
Yeah, every second counts.
So where did that put you overall? Did you get the win?
I got Kenya, Ethiopia, and then it was actually the Japan trials for the World Athletic Championships for next year, 2017, and I came 6th. The Japanese girl beat me by 1 second. So I had a sprint finish, and it was actually funny. I don't know if there's footage out there, but we're going down straight, and the camera truck was turning off to the right, and so I went to go follow. I knew I couldn't follow the exact way it went, but I thought that was a finish line. But the Japanese girl was right beside me. We were neck and neck, and she put her left hand out to the side as if, no, we've got to go that way. I'm like, okay, righto. So I went to go run that way, and then I looked to the right, and I'm like, but the finish line's that way. So at the end of the marathon, I've done a 180 kind of turn and sprinted up, and she'd already got some ground on me. So I was catching her, but she just got me by 1 second. So
is that a deliberate?
I don't know, but the footage was played at the official ceremony at the end, and all the whole crowd, because you should have seen my face and the way I turned, the whole crowd went, oh, like this. And I've had a few people go, did she send you the wrong way? And I'm like, when are you seeing this footage? I don't know what she was doing. I have no idea, but yeah, she got me. She got me by seconds. So
well, there'll be another year of retribution.
Yeah, that's right.
If I see you running, putting your arm out, I won't follow.
Don't do it.
Cass, we shared. I think it was for me a special moment. We were both in New York, 2015.
Yeah.
I had snuck into the sub-elite category, and you were obviously fairly and squarely planted in the elite category, but we shared some common facilities before the start of New York, and it was nice to see a familiar face because
absolutely.
I was kind of there going, what am I doing here? There's the Olympic champion, and and there's Wilson Kipsang, the former world marathon record holder.
Yep.
And what am I doing here? And so I was really comforted to see you. I'm like, Cassie, good to see a Queensland girl.
Absolutely.
I know that you were. That wasn't it was a solid race, solid performance. I think you went 2:38 or
2:38. Yeah.
I came home well outside of where I thought I'd be. So we both had races that we were disappointed with.
Yeah.
But it was still good to see you in the finish 10 at the end.
Yeah.
You were home 8 minutes before I was.
Yeah.
But what was New York like running for you? You know, just describe that, because I've tried to explain it to people. And
Sure.
How would you describe it?
Oh my gosh, an experience of a lifetime. Just having the people line the streets, running over those bridges. There was one of the bridges, I don't know if you remember, that there was no one on it. It was eerie. There was just no one anywhere. And I was running by myself at that stage.
Was that the big tunnel one?
Yeah, the big tunnel, the one that the wind was coming straight in your face and it was tunneling right in you. Yeah. That was up a hill. Yeah, that was some fun.
And that was a decent hill.
There were a lot of decent hills on that
deceptive,
course.
isn't it?
It's very deceptive, yeah. But yeah, the just having the crowd in the street. I guess the crowd's not so much Berlin. If we'll touch on that, but Berlin was insane for the crowds. But New York was just where you got to go. Like you were going from Staten Island and you finished through Central Park. Like, what the? I'd never been to New York before, and I, literally running the streets of New York. Like, amazing. That in itself, like, you see the smile on my face. Like, it was just amazing, and I loved it.
Standing on the bridge at the start, and you look left, and there's Manhattan, and you're like, what are we doing here?
Where am I? Yeah.
One of the, I think, coming off that bridge that you mentioned, Cass, with the wind, that was, I think, taking us onto First Ave on Manhattan, and then you ran down that off ramp, and it was like a wall of people.
Yeah, that was a massive wall of people that way.
And you have to hold yourself back from just claiming everyone's cheers because they're not just cheering for you.
Yeah.
So, do you think you'll ever head back to New York?
Oh, definitely. I didn't give that course all I had, and I took it for granted. The first half wasn't too bad. I think I went through as 1:13 in my first half, and completely blew out on the second half. So I want to get back and definitely hit that course again. I'm hungry to do that for sure.
All right, we might have to be there at the same time.
Let's do it.
If they'll accept me again in my
of course
category.
They will.
I felt like I didn't live up to what their expectations
I didn't either. Don't worry, I didn't either.
I was on the drip. I didn't get the drip. I was completely hypothermic at the end. So
my gosh.
You left well before I did. I got my money's worth. I hung around in that medical tent for a long time.
And lastly, on the 2017 highlights reel, I mean, where do we finish? There's so many highlights from the incredible guests that we featured in 2017. However, lastly, I want to bring in the highlights reel with Richard Murray, South African triathlete. Richard Murray's bio is impressive. He's a dual South African triathlon Olympic representative. Richard finished 4th in a very fast finish in the Rio 2016 Olympic Games triathlon, coming in behind his countryman Henry Schoeman and also the famous and famed and much loved Brownlee brothers Alistair and Johnny. Richard's the Super League triathlon champion from Hamilton Island, the world duathlon champion, and I caught up with Richard in person at POGO Physio just off the back of his Super League triathlon victory on Hamilton Island. And we spoke about all things relating to his career, the highs, the lows, and the learnings. And of most interest was the story that Richard shared around his humble beginnings running on a farm. So let's jump in, take a listen to Richard Murray sharing on episode 51 of the Physical Performance Show. Rich, let's just go from Rio right back to the start. You came from a mountain biking background and a running background, and through the week you shared with me that you used to run around, your town with no shoes on the gravel roads. So what was your youth like, Rich, growing up?
So obviously you see my bio that it says like I'm a farm boy at heart, and that's since I was about 4 years old, we moved to the farm, which is about 10 kilometers outside, 15 k's outside of Durbanville, in the wine district. And literally you could look out my bedroom window and see 15 k's of nothingness, and about 10 people around. I think that there were initially, only about 6 people living on the farm, and they built some houses, and then there was about 10 odd people on the farm. And that was it. We had motorbikes, bicycles, we could run around, we could go and play in the dam. That was pretty much it. There was no like grocery stores, movies, cinemas, nothing of that. and it was a very simple upbringing. And every day I used to run. We had a border collie, which was very good at running, and I used to run out the door, and the dog used to see me, and I used to just run to the end of our drive. It was about 2.5 dead straight gravel road with nothing either side, just fields everywhere. And I used to run every day back and forth the end of the field, and it was like an uphill kind of all the way out. And I could literally look straight and see the end of the driveway because it was so straight. And so, now I hate out and back, so I love to do loops, probably from farm days. But I ran barefoot until I was about 12 or 13. And I ran the gravel road, was full of rocks and everything and stuff, so my feet were hard as. And so that's pretty much how it started. Folks didn't think I needed shoes, and until I ran my first cross country race and ran over some thorns, and my feet were black on the bottom from all the broken off thorns. After that I got shoes, but so that's pretty much the upbringing. It was very simple, basic, and nothing flamboyant. We didn't have massive fancy things there or anything, but it was a simple, good upbringing. So.
And you grew up with your brother, who I believe is just older or younger?
Yeah, I've got a 2-year older brother. Brother's 2 years older, and one that's 1.5 years younger than me. So I'm kind of the middle kid. And they both went into software and hardware of computers. So it's literally complete opposites. Like, I did sport, and they obviously got the sporting gene as well. And my younger brother, and then they were also like beating the cross country things at school and running pretty well. And I took it on a bit more seriously than they did, I guess.
Well, I mean, you've gone on to do more sport for all of them than the last generations, Rich. So, at what point did you know that you had some real genuine sporting talent, Rich, growing up?
I think probably when I was running in primary school already, at the 1,200 meters on the track. We had a grass track at our school, Kenridge Primary, which is probably about 1.5 kilometers from where we live now. And the high school is about 1 K away from where we live now, so everything was pretty close. And I was literally almost lapping the kids when I was in primary school. One of the overachievers and stuff, I would win the high jump, long jump, triple jump and whatever. And also obviously 1,200 meters. I think I had the 1,200 meter record there until someone mailed me this year and said that their kid beat my 1,200 meter record from that stood for about 15 years. So there's other kids coming through, and people let me know about it. And I think my brother behind me managed to beat my school records a lot of the time. So I would set the record, and of course, being younger than me, he would go and beat the record, and then I could never reclaim my records. But that's pretty much how it started. So doing that, and then when I got through high school, did some mountain biking pretty seriously. So I was national champ mountain biking in South Africa for 2 years.
For age or for opens?
For age. Yep. So boys under 18. Yep. I was South African champ twice. And I think I was also downhill South African champ as well for 1 year, which I raced just on my hardtail mountain bike when I did downhill. So I did some pretty crazy stuff, and that's pretty much how it started. And then I went to do duathlon when I got through. So they said, "Oh, you're running and cycling is good. Do duathlon." So I said, "Well, that makes sense." Yep. And then
that was a coach or someone just around you.
It was. I can't be 100% sure. It's probably half my dad or half to do with I went to go join a squad in Stellenbosch that I went to go and just do some training with, and then the guy said, "Oh, you should try duathlon." It must have been through the school. So then I did cross-country meets where I ran against some of the fastest cross-country kids in South Africa. I ran South African cross-country champs as well, where I came second. I won the South African cross-country champs when I was a kid as well. Yep. And so I come from cross-country as well, so off-road running. I raced barefoot all the time. No one had shoes. Yep. We ran track as well barefoot. We didn't have shoes on the track. Oh, wow. And so it's people would just tape our feet up with that kind of masking tape type stuff with our feet, and we would just smash out a 1,500 on the track. And so I think it's quite funny, but back home it's pretty standard. And I went and did the 10K South African champs, and I got beaten by 30 other guys, and I think 8 of them were barefoot.
Is that open champs?
That is open champs, yeah. Yep. And it's scary to see guys running 29 or under 29 barefoot on tar road. And
to put listeners in perspective, Rich, how many years? What was a year then? What year?
I think it was about 5 years ago.
Okay, so it's only relatively recent.
Yeah, it was about 5 years ago. So it was about 23. I didn't have a seating, so I started behind about 300 people or something, or 400 people. Wow. So it took me about 20 seconds to get to the start line, which is a bit unfair. But I think next time I'll probably actually get a seating. Hopefully,
I'd imagine you might get a seating.
Just hopefully, Rich. Rock it.
I imagine you might even get an escort to the start line. So, Rich. Rich, at what point did the triathlon light switch on for you?
So I went to go and do triathlon in Germany when I was about 17. I flew there by myself. Parents gave me some cash. And there was a guy from Stellenbosch he's got a guest house in Somerset West, which is about 40 kilometers from my house in South Africa. And he had a triathlon. He has in Germany, there's a school, and he's a school teacher there. And he had it's like a school hostel, where he allowed foreigners to come in and stay there and do triathlon.
Oh, wow.
And so he told me, you can come there, stay there for free, and you can do some triathlon. And there's some races you can race for our club. So they've got a club in Germany, which is funded by the city. And so they can pay the athletes, like, I think it was 50 euros is what I got for appearance fee for the race, which was cool. And it was a second division race, and that's where it started. And so the Bundesliga have a first division and a second division. And so there's literally thousands and thousands of people racing, kids, everything. And so I went there, did my first one, funny enough, and I raced against Sebastian Kienle, which I got a picture. Him and I broke away on the bike. And it was like my first international triathlon race, more or less.
Wow.
And so that's how it pretty much started. And then after that, I think I went to go and race the Duathlon World Champs, and I won it in 2008 in Rimini, in Italy. And after that, I went to, they literally told me, said, I need to stop duathlon because it's a dead sport and you're not going to make any money doing duathlon. So he said, you better learn to swim.
Who is this?
And this was Alman Nighting. He's a German guy who's a school teacher, and he owns a guest house in Somerset West in South Africa.
So this is,
and so it had the connection through Europe through him. And I went to race there. My parents thought I was going there to be part of a training club in Germany, where I went there by myself and was training in the pouring rain for probably 3 months in Germany by myself. And, being a teenager was pretty tough. So I was there on my own, just doing my own training, going out in 5-degree rain. Didn't have arm warmers, leg warmers back then because I came from South Africa where it was hot. So I was just training in the arm warmer, leg warmers at like 5 degrees.
And is this when your parents had funded you? I remember you.
Yeah, they had funded. Yeah, they told me they paid for my ticket. And no, this was way before that.
Okay.
Yeah, this was
real early days.
Yeah, this was.
Okay,
and
so
after this, I almost wanted to stop triathlon because I was just after doing this endeavor, my parents said, like, really? Was it that rough? I said, yeah, no, it was rough. Eh?
but they were supportive of you, obviously.
Yeah, they were super supportive, and they thought I was getting really well taken care of. It was a little bit of a kind of makeshift, go there, do some triathlon, cycling to the pool every day, and it was raining a lot, so I would ride to the pool in the rain with my clit on, swim at the pool, and ride back in the rain. For a couple of weeks, and it was really tough, and I was there training on my own, which would made it even harder.
Yep.
And the Kiwis were there. They had a whole Kiwi national team at a training thing there. So I actually met some of the top Kiwi guys were there training. So that's kind of where it started, and I went to Duathlon Worlds, and I said I won that in Rimini in Italy in 2008.
Yep.
And right after that I went to I was under 19, so it was junior triathlon world champs in Vancouver in Canada, and I went there and I literally got shafted out the swim by about 4 or 5 minutes. And time trialed, almost got lapped on the bike, and the front group was about like a K behind me the whole bike leg. So for 20K, I was literally getting chased by the front group for 20K on my own. And then luckily it didn't manage to suck me up, which is cool. My one friend behind me dropped off and got sucked up by the front group, and he got lapped out. So I literally and then, after that I was almost in tears crying, My friend was in tears crying. He's like, and after that I realized, man, if I want to do triathlon now, I better learn to swim.
And you were how old at this stage, Rich?
I think I must have been 18.
Yep.
Yeah, I must have been 18.
And you had been swim training, but at that point, what did your swim training look like, Rich?
I can't actually even remember, honestly.
Yeah, like a couple of sessions.
It was probably like 10 to 15K a week was probably where it was at, and I thought anything more than that was like not really feasible, possible.
So you made a decision after that after that World Championships that you needed to swim. And what happened off the back of that, Rich? Okay, your bike leg's strong, your run leg's strong, but the swim's obviously Achilles heel.
I think the following year after that I decided, I think it was Gold Coast. So I was first year under 23, and then it was Gold Coast, and I'm like, I'm not even going to go there. So I was in my final year of school. It was my finals, exams, and everything, and I'm like, triathlon, I'm going to give it a break this year. I'll do some training and local racing, but I'm not going to go overseas. I'm not going to go get destroyed in Australia. I can't afford it. It's too expensive. And doing double the swim, I'd probably get abused even more. So I'd probably been like 10 minutes out or 8 minutes out behind the leaders.
Because you're talking about a 1,500 metres.
It was double the time, and I was already 4 minutes back that year. So I thought, no, maybe this year is not my year. So I'll sit it out. So I finished school then, and focus wasn't really too much on triathlon.
So you did sit the year out, more or less, of competing?
More or less international. I didn't go overseas. I stayed at home. I studied, got the best results I could from high school. That was like, okay, this is the goal. And I think even there was a local series in South Africa that we've been racing to make money. I also decided not to race any of that as well. So I think when I was about 18, I just partied and did a little bit of sport, local stuff, mountain biking, some fun stuff. Yeah, and so that year kind of cut it off. And the 2 years after that, I studied. So I studied until I was about, I think, 20, and then that was about it. So I think in 2010 is when I kind of made the decision. I said, okay, I kind of decided myself I want to be a pro. So I studied for 2 years sports conditioning and coaching from ETA. It's Exercise Training Academy in Stellenbosch.
Yep.
And my focus said I have to do something. I was stuck up between, doing some serious studying. I wanted to actually become a bio as well, and I just couldn't see myself sitting down for 3 years. I wanted to. I knew I could do it, but it just was not really me. Once you had seen the world a bit outside, and you kind of have that idea of, man, outside the triathlon world is like 20, 30 times bigger than it is here, and people got money. They're supported by their countries, their cities have got big things, sponsored by banks and everything, so it's much, much bigger. So I think that initial seeing the sport when I was younger kind of fired the thing in me to kind of like, hey, I could actually do this seriously.
Yep.
And so in 2010, we packed up my car. I had a Golf 4, and we packed it full of stuff, drove up to Potchefstroom, which is an altitude training camp. It's like a university just outside Johannesburg.
Yep.
And I said, okay, I'm going to do some training here, and so I'm going to start my year off, planned the year out, kind of sat there with a whole calendar, wrote out all the races I could do. My folks said, okay, goodbye to me. A friend of mine joined me, packed my car up, drove, I think it's 1,500 odd K up north. And stayed at one of the top runners' house. He had like an apartment. Stayed there for 3 months training with one of my friends, and that's kind of where it all started.
And so you were, early 20s. You'd made a decision, a conscious decision. I'm going to pursue this and give it my best, wherever that may take you. At that point, could have you imagined, as that young Rich Murray, the success you've now experienced?
Funny thing is I don't see myself being, super successful or super out there or anything. I'm kind of just a normal guy doing some sport, running around in Lycra for a living. So, that's how I kind of like to keep it. But it's quite funny. I mean, it's such a simple sport in the greater scheme of things, and I think it's when I started, I knew, the guy told me, he says, it's not going to come in a year or two, it's going to take you 5 years.
Yep.
And I knew that from the start already. I said, okay, well, I'm 20 now, maybe by the time I'm 25 I'll be able to make some money. And I realized, the swimming, I went through about 6 or 7 different coaches.
For swimming.
Yep. Different things, gliding, stroke, short stroke, swinging over the arm, high elbow, you name it. I've heard like 10 or 12 different types of, the formula to become a great swimmer. It was very interesting. So I had a lot of different people that influenced how things have gone, and it was where I started. I was literally swimming by myself. I didn't have a coach or anything. Well, I was writing my own training programs out. So I'd finished college. I read a couple of triathlon books.
Which ones, Rich?
And it was the Triathlete's Training Bible by Joel Friel.
Yep. Who's now your coach?
Joel Filio.
Oh, sorry.
Joel Filio. No, it's close.
Sorry.
It's close.
Your pronunciation.
It's Joel Friel.
Yeah.
So literally I read the book, so periodization training. I think I was 18 or 17 when I read it. I was born in Germany, so my folks bought me this triathlon book. They said, here's this massive book which is super thick, and I literally went through it. I think it's the Triathlete's Training Bible or something. And I read through every single page like this was, if I don't know this stuff, then I'm not going to be able to make it. So I literally, like, everything I was reading, and I was actually implementing the training. And so it's quite funny, but I looked at that, and now I'm like almost over the top about it. And I said, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this part of your training now when you have that coming up? And so I'm very assessing in what I do all the time. Yeah. And I think that's quite important. Athletes have a little bit of his own voice, and to actually understand, I'm probably the worst athlete to coach. A lot of people, when they spoke to Joel, they said, don't coach Richard. he's uncoachable. You're not going to be able to coach him, and it's because, I mean, obviously, you know, it's the worst thing to ask a coach why. You know, the coach says, you need to do this. And a lot of coaches just say, because I say so. And it's the same as in school, you know, when the teacher tells you, you know, that's because that's the way it is. But luckily with Joel, he's been able to explain to me why, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing now. Yep. Which, you know, it's not that simple. But it's definitely, you know, I've had actually learned from Joel a lot as well. And my first coach he's actually a high performance coach in Pretoria. His name's Lindsay Perry. And he's kind of where I started. So he's an ultra distance runner coach. Yep. And he's got a lot of top South African distance runners under his books as well. And so I went there to Pretoria, which is about 200k drive from Potchefstroom. So first I went up to altitude by myself with a friend, did some training, and then drove 200k's to the east and stayed at a bed and breakfast for about a month and a half because I had nowhere to stay. So I had to pay. I had no money to pay for that stuff either. But I knew that's where I needed to be. So I was staying in bed and breakfast just so I could be where the triathletes were. So that's the only group where the triathletes were. They couldn't house me anywhere. It was a ridiculous amount of money to stay at the facilities. So I just I'd find the cheapest bed and breakfast and just stayed close by and trained there with him.
Yeah, wow. And so, Rich, your relationship with Joel, that's been in place now for how many years or seasons?
I think it's going on the fifth year now. Yeah, so since 2013. Yep. So 13, 14, 15, 16, yeah.
So going into the fourth year.
Yeah.
Or fifth, maybe.
Fifth year.
Yeah, don't worry. That's why I'm a physio, I'm not an accountant.
Yeah.
Rich, I mean, you're swimming. You know, you've really improved that over the recent years. But you shared something with me in the last week or so that at one point you were doing double swim days. Is that right? You were just really intensely trying to upskill yourself.
Yeah. So I literally looked and I said, well, how's the best way to improve my swimming? And Joel said, well, we can do some double swim days. So I said, well, what's that? Swim twice in one day. I was like, oh, that's a terrible idea. But it's definitely something different and not for everyone. But some of the time it's the same with the running. So we'll do double run days as well. Instead of doing, you know, one long run, if you split, you know, the 2-hour runs happen to 2 1-hour runs, or maybe 1.5 in the morning or 1:20 in the morning and then 40 in the evening. And I think that way the body, you know, if you're a quick responder and you recover quick, probably that's a good way of going about it because it doesn't load your body as badly. So you start to fatigue and, you know, your body can actually get damage itself versus doing 2 sessions. You can actually weigh it up and do a bit shorter, more frequency. And I think that's definitely the one thing that we've been looking at when I've been training with Joel the last few years. It's about obviously the frequency of training versus the duration of training all the time. And from the swimming side, we decided, okay, I'm going to do a block of swimming. I'm going to try and see if I can do probably 30 to 40K or somewhere like that per week. I think the biggest week was 38K or something like that. And coming from being a non-swimmer, that's a lot of swimming. And literally, I would just do one other session that day. So it'd either be, I literally went double swim and then a run that day. And the next day, I think I went double swim and then single swim. So it was double, single, double, single, double. It was, I would literally get in about, I think, 3 runs and 3 bikes during the week. And the rest would just be swimming.
Wow.
So, listeners, there you have it, the 2017 highlights reel of the Physical Performance Show. I hope you enjoyed hearing from some of the great guests we featured in 2017. If you missed any of those episodes in full, then obviously jump back, take a listen through the archives. If that was a recap, another repetition of the interviews that you've already listened to in full, then I hope you still took some enjoyment and learnings from their sharings, the guests. If you did enjoy today's episode and you're yet to pass on the Physical Performance Show to someone that you know in your world would both benefit and enjoy the program, then that would mean the world to me in rounding out the 2017 calendar year. If you take a moment to share it from your smartphone or your device. Massive thanks, as always, to the faithful listeners who week in, week out support the program. Without your listenership, then this show would simply not be possible. A big thanks to the good folk who I mention more or less every week who bring this show to you. They work tirelessly behind the scenes, and that is Daryl Misson, our audio engineer, who's simply sensational at what he does. Matthew Walden on all things podcast, graphics and imagery, and Sophie Walker on all things POGO, Physio, marketing. Listeners, thanks very much for your reviews in the year of 2017 on iTunes. Reviews really are the currency that helps this show get into the earbuds of more listeners. Big thanks to those that took the time in 2017 to leave a review, and in particular, in rounding out 2017, just want to read out a review that came through from Nudge. Nudge's comment was, "Love the homegrown talent. I'm a sport lover, triathlon nerd and podcast tragic, voraciously working my way through episode after episode. I have tickets to the Commonwealth Games, and hearing from these high performers really makes me appreciate the athletes I want to go and see. Thanks for bringing these athletes and experts to our attention. Such a great initiative, brilliant podcast." Nudge, thank you very much for the support. And yes, it's 2018. We're the first week in 2018, and this is the Commonwealth Games year. This show is always recorded on the Gold Coast, and we are thrilled to be just less than 100 days away from hosting this incredible international sporting event. If you're going to be on the Gold Coast, be sure to let me know. Drop me a message over on social at Brad_beer. Listeners, if you're into running, be sure to check out my Amazon bestseller, You Can Run Pain-Free. It's available in audiobooks over on iBooks or Audible, and also Kindle versions across all Amazon platforms. And of course, the trusty paperback versions over on pogophysio.com.au, or of course Amazon shipping internationally, and also now domestically inside Australia. If you're in the southeast Queensland area and you're injured, looking to get back to your best, then jump over, check out Pogo Physio's unique service offerings. They really are an unmatched way to go from injured back to your physical best, receiving the treatment that you not only can afford, but the treatment that you most benefit from through our unique fixed fee unlimited access model of care. Next week, you are in for a real treat. You get to join me in sitting with an athlete who has one of the most remarkable stories out there in the world of professional sport. I'm referring to Lionel Sanders. Certainly for the triathletes who listen in, you will know who Lionel Sanders is. For the uninitiated, Lionel Sanders has a remarkable story. Coming from a background of drug addiction, I'm talking hard drugs, in his early 20s, through to in 2017 finishing runner-up in the Hawaii Ironman World Triathlon Championships. Lionel in that race led the race right up until the last 3 miles, where he was passed by an incredibly fast finishing Patrick Langer. Lionel's story will really captivate you. His training methods are incredible, doing all his training more or less indoors. One of the things that I loved most about recording this episode, and the reason we want to feature this as the first show for 2018, is his attitude. It is remarkable. He's relentless. You're going to really enjoy Lionel Sanders sharing next week on the Physical Performance Show. Until then, keep pursuing your physical best. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.